My life took an unexpected turn when I became a eunuch, a journey of loss and rebirth. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday. The sun hung low, casting long shadows. I stood there, heart pounding, feeling the weight of the world in my chest. The air felt thick, suffocating. They found me in the hospital, pale and trembling. I could hear the faint beeping of machines, steady but mocking. My parents were there, their faces etched with worry. My mother's eyes shone with tears, her trembling hands clenching my own. My father's face was tight, a mask of pain. I wanted to scream at the unfairness of it all. I had always been the brave one. Strong. Then the diagnosis came. An unexpected twist of fate: cancer, they said. A word heavy with finality. I felt the world tilt. It suddenly seemed like everything I had known was unraveling. My life, my dreams, shattered into a million pieces. I lost more than just my body. I lost my sense of self. The world outside continued, but I was trapped in a haze of fear and uncertainty. Friends drifted away, their hurried excuses ringing in my ears. I could taste the bitterness of loneliness, sharp and unforgiving. I grieved not just for what I had lost, but for who I was becoming. Medicine became my lifeline and my prison. I never imagined I'd face this kind of struggle. I remember the nights, staring at the ceiling, listening to the whispers of regret. I felt disconnected from my own skin, as if I was a ghost haunting my own life. The thought of becoming a eunuch twisted in my mind like a serpent, a symbol of loss and rebirth, as if I was stepping into a new, uncharted territory. Yet, with every tear shed, I discovered a flicker of resilience within. As I lay there, I wondered, could I rise from these ashes? Or was this the end? I fought against tears, fought against the pounding in my chest, longing for answers. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days blended into one another, a haze of sterile whites and blues, punctuated by the sharp tang of antiseptic. I shifted in my hospital bed, the once welcoming sheets now scratchy against my skin. With each passing moment, the reality of my situation became clearer yet more distant, like a dream that you can't quite grasp when you wake. Outside, the world pulsed with life, but I was encased in a bubble of suffering and uncertainty. It was a Wednesday morning when I met Clara, a fellow patient who had been ensconced in her own battle. She was in the bed beside mine, a laughter that belied the tubes weaving through her frail body. Clara was bright and vibrant, her spirit undaunted by the demon she faced. Every time our eyes met, a connection sparked, something profound and unspoken. Are you going to sulk all day? She teased one morning, her smile contagious. The edge of my lips turned up, whether from her playful jab or the sheer absurdity of the situation, I couldn't tell. I didn't realize I was sulking, I replied, the words betraying a hint of humor. Despite my heavy heart. As the days passed, Clara became my lifeline, weaving tales of her past wild dance parties and summer escapades. Each story she spun was like a thread, stitching my fragmented heart together, reminding me of my own reckless, joyful youth. I found solace in her laughter, a beacon in the sea of despair that surrounded us, but hope couldn't mask the daunting truth: my body was changing in irrevocable ways. I glanced in the mirror one afternoon, my reflection returning a stranger. The eyes I once recognized were now filled with sorrow, overshadowed by the knowledge of what was to come. I couldn't shake the weight of loss, and the grief it bore felt as undeniable as the walls of my confinement. On the 5th day of my hospitalization, my parents arrived with a small bouquet of daisies. My mother's gentle presence filled the room, and though her eyes glistened with unshed tears, she held a brave face. She brought with her a warmth, a flicker of home amidst the coldness of the hospital. "Look, sweetheart," she whispered, setting the flowers on the window sill. "These remind me of summer days, like when we used to have picnics by the lake." I closed my eyes, imagining the sun-warmed grass and laughter lingering in the air. "I remember," I said softly. "Can we do that again? When I get out?" Her words hung in the air like a fragile promise. "Of course, honey," but uncertainty gnawed at me, a relentless specter. Would I ever traverse those sunlit lakes again? Would the world accept me when this part of my life was done? I felt as if I was teetering at the edge of a precipice, too afraid to look down yet too curious to turn back. Days turned into weeks, and with every treatment, I felt a new wave of isolation creeping closer. I envied Clara's spirit, so unwavering and brave, while I felt my own fight waning. There were times at night when the darkness whispered doubts I tried to ignore, tempting me to drown in despair. How was I to emerge from this unscathed? Would I even recognize myself? One evening, while flipping through a magazine Clara had lent me, I stumbled upon an article about the redefining journey after physical loss, stories of incredible resilience and transformation. For a fleeting moment, I felt a spark, a possibility bubbling within me. Could I find a new form of existence? The warmth of hope flickered, but just as quickly as it appeared, shadows descended. During my nightly dose of solitude, a sudden knock interrupted my thoughts. It was my doctor, a gentle presence, who bore news that felt like a punch to the gut. "There's been a complication," he began, words molded with caution. My heart raced. He continued, "We may have to adjust your treatment plan. You might need to stay longer for experimental care." At those words, my world crackled and fractured anew. Could I endure more? My fingers trembled at the thought of prolonging this torment. I stared into his compassionate eyes, a thousand questions swirling in my mind. Would I ever truly emerge from this? Had I fought too hard only to face an unending tunnel? Just as despair threatened to envelop me, I thought of Clara's laughter, her unyielding belief in miracles. Her light lingered in my heart, reminding me that even in the depths of darkness, there could be flickers of hope. But just as I began to reconnect with those feelings, a new shadow whispered through the air. A fateful phone call jolted me from my deepening thoughts. Clara was in a critical state. Panic surged through me, an immovable lightning bolt. Would I lose her too? Would hope be snuffed out, leaving me to wander alone in the darkness? The nurse hurried past my door, and my heart raced as I struggled to navigate my own grief in real time. Something within me cracked, and in that moment, I found myself standing at the precipice of despair. Would I plunge into darkness, or would I find the strength to rise? The answer hung precariously in the air, a question that remained unanswered but echoed through my soul, marking the silences of the night. The sterile hospital room felt more like a prison as the clock ticked in steady rhythm, each second a reminder of the uncertainty looming over me. The walls, once a canvas for my desperation, now echoed with haunting memories of Clara's laughter, the very sound that had brought vibrancy to my muted existence. I longed to hear her voice again, to reassess that unspoken connection we forged amidst our battles. That I ached to see her smile, but the phone call replayed in my mind like an unwelcome film. Clara in a critical state. The air around me grew heavy, pressing down on my chest as though the weight of her pain seeped into my bones. I couldn't fathom a hospital without her feisty spirit lighting the way. It was a bleak thought that sent me spiraling back into self-doubt. Against my better judgment, I allowed myself to be swept into a whirlwind of emotions. Frustration burned in my throat, a bile of anger aimed at the universe for its cruelty, its twisted sense of humor. I thought of the laughter shared with Clara, the fragmented moments of joy that would forever remain etched in the ether between us. What if this was the beginning of the end, not only for her but also for whatever flickers of hope ignited in my heart? The next morning, as a soft sunlight streamed through the window, I pulled the curtain back to reveal an almost ethereal glow. In that light, I could almost believe that everything would be okay, that maybe Clara was fighting with every ounce of strength she had. I took a deep breath and reached for the button to call the nurse. The sterile scent of antiseptics filled my lungs, but it was a reminder of resilience more than despair. "Can I see Clara?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tremor that flushed through me. The nurse looked at me, her brow furrowed in concern. "We're monitoring her closely, but I'll see what I can do," she replied, a whisper of hope threading through her tone. That I waited, allowing my imagination to bloom with the possibility of Clara's recovery. What would I tell her? How could I reassure her that she was more than just a statistical anomaly swirling in the hospital's harsh reality? She needed to know she wasn't alone. A few moments later, the nurse returned. "You can see her for a few minutes, but only if you keep it short." My heart raced as I followed her through the labyrinth of the hospital. The walls echoed with whispers of heartbeats and the soft patter of nurses' shoes against the floor. Each step felt monumental as a tumultuous mix of dread and anticipation swirled inside me. When I finally stood at Clara's bedside, the sight of her frail form struck a blow to me. Tubes ran from her wrist, and her normally radiant complexion was pale, almost translucent. Yet, despite her condition, there was still something profoundly beautiful about her. Her fiery spirit was so evident, even now. "Hey, you," I breathed, forcing a smile through my own pain. Her eyes flickered open, and I saw a moment of realization before she grinned weakly. "Didn't think you'd come. I figured you'd be wallowing in self-pity over there." I chuckled, warmth bubbling in my chest. "I think I saved that for the after-party." "But really, how are you?" "I'm fighting, just like you," she replied, her confidence tremulous yet undeterred. "And I need you to fight too." In that moment, her words struck me like a lifeline. The fragile allocation of hope tethered me to the present as I grasped her hand, a connection unchanged despite the machinery that surrounded her. "I'm not going anywhere," I pledged. "Well, get through this together." Clara's smile widened, though it was laced with pain. "You're my lifeline, you know. You keep me going." As hope sparked between us, igniting the shared strength in our struggles, my mind shifted, the encroaching dread receding, for just a moment. But behind that flicker was an unmistakable tense a nagging sense of danger, an undercurrent that weighed heavily in my chest. After a time that felt far too short, the nurse gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "It's time," she said softly. As I stepped back, the warmth of her hand lingered in mine. And I seized that moment, that bond forged within our shared isolation. "Stay strong, Clara," I urged, fighting back tears as I prepared to leave. "I'll be right here waiting." Walking back to my own room, the shadows felt icy and all-consuming. Each step was riddled with uncertainty, predictably dark and tangled. My heart raced at the thought of Clara barely holding on as I faced my own tumultuous road ahead. That evening, after the day's flux of emotions, I sat in the dim light of my room, staring out into the night sky, longing for clarity. It was just then, amidst the thoughts spiraling through my mind, when the enormity of what lay ahead crashed around me. A knock broke through my reverie. It was the doctor again, his face set with a mix of concern and something else, something unnameable. "There's been an update on Clara's condition," he said, his tone grave. My heart raced again, pulse echoing in my ears. "There's not much time," he continued, "and we need your consent for a trial treatment that has shown promise. It's unconventional and very risky, but. That one word was enough to encapsulate everything I dreaded. I didn't want to lose her, not now. But could I really face the idea of risking everything on a possibility? The question hung in the air, heavy with gravity, as I stood motionless, teetering once again on the precipice between hope and despair. Would I find the courage to embrace the unknown in the name of love? Or would I be forever left with the haunting choices of what could have been? Each heartbeat was a jumping-off point, and the cliff loomed dangerously before me. The soft light of dawn seeped into my room, illuminating the shadows of doubt that fascinated me during the restless night. I remained entranced by the impending decision regarding Clara's treatment, a volatile mixture of possibility and fear gnawing at my insides. The specter of worst-case scenarios loomed large, ushering in wave after wave of turmoil that threatened to drag me under. I sighed deeply, feeling the weight of my own indecision pressing down on my shoulders. The prospect of trial treatment tugged at a flicker of hope somewhere in my heart, but that spark waged war against the alarm bells reverberating in my mind. Clara had always been the fighter. I could almost hear her words echoing back to me from the previous day, "I need you to fight too." In that moment of recollection, I resolved to grasp the threads of courage that had just begun to weave their way through my being. I didn't want Clara to see me as anything other than steadfast. Clipped footsteps on the corridor floor pulled me from my thoughts, and my resolve solidified into a tinge of determination. I would make that decision, no matter how harrowing it would be. I wouldn't let fear dictate the path for us, I would embrace the uncertainty head-on. The drive to the hospital was punctuated by my racing thoughts, my heart beating like a drum in my chest. Each stoplight felt like an Eternisha moment where I could question everything yet again. What if I signed those papers and something went terribly wrong? What if Clara was too far gone? The anger at fate twisted my gut into knots, but I couldn't let despair snatch me away. I would have faith. Upon arrival, I was met with the sterile air of the hospital, heavier now with a mixture of purpose and dread. The nurse greeted me with a faint smile, but her eyes held a trace of sympathy that threatened to break my resolve. "Clara is stable at the moment. You can go in," she said, guiding me toward her room. My chest tightened as I approached her bedside. Clara lay there, still and fragile, but there was a flicker of something more in her relaxation, a peace, perhaps, that I desperately wished to claim as a sign. I pulled a chair close and watched her, tracing the contours of her face, memorizing the way her lips curled slightly upward even in her slumber. "Clara," I whispered, reaching to take her hand, encasing the coolness of her fingers in my warmth. "I talked to the doctor. They have a trial treatment for you." I paused, watching the hesitance ripple across her brow as she stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing hazy pools of uncertainty. "What is it?" she murmured, her voice a fragile echo. "It's unconventional. There are risks, Clara, but it could help." She pondered my words, her breaths becoming a steady rhythm as she processed the weight they carried. "And you think it's worth it?" My throat tightened, and I held her gaze, seeing the vulnerability behind her bold exterior. "I can't make that decision for you. But I believe in the possibility it presents. And I believe in you." Clara closed her eyes again, the shadows of uncertainty lining her features. The moment stretched into quiet silence, and I could almost see her weighing the choices like delicate scales. Should she accept the heart-stopping uncertainty or cling to the familiar, even if it meant stagnation and surrender? "There's one thing I need to say," she finally broke the stillness, her voice trembling. "If I start the treatment and it doesn't go well, if I ask you to let me go." "Clara," I interrupted, the thought crashing over me like a tidal wave. "Don't say that. We will fight this together. You're not getting rid of me that easily." But the desperate light in her eyes told a different story, one that beckoned me to the precipice of our respective fears, the potential for painful farewells lingering in the air between us. As she squeezed my hand, it was both a plea and a promise, a trembling thread woven into the depths of our hearts. In that moment, I felt a silent promise rise within me, one that went well beyond my own fears. I would fight, I would love, and I would make the most difficult choices, no matter where that road led us. I launched into explaining the risks and benefits of the treatment, sharing every detail, but in the back of my mind, I could hear Clara's voice echoing again, urging me to weigh her needs against my own fears. The doctor had emphasized the urgency, the ticking clock I could feel counting toward an unknown future. As Clara responded, her determination reigniting, I could almost convince myself that we'd emerge on the other side, that our battle would yield victory. But with each word exchanged, an undeniable shadow loomed, threatening to overwhelm me once more. After a lengthy discussion, Clara finally took a deep breath and said, "Let's do it. I want to fight." Her resolve ignited a fierce warmth within me, but that warmth was swiftly punctured by an unsettling thought as a doctor suddenly entered the room, his face grave and lined with worry. "Clara," he began, and the air shifted. We've discovered something concerning in the tests. That treatment may be more complicated than we initially thought, and my heart dropped into my stomach, the words falling like lead. The doctor's next sentence seemed a dreadful expanse between possibility and despair, the chasm widening at his tone, the implications of his words opening a rift, separating hope from reality. As he spoke, the walls of the room faded into the background, engulfed by the thundering beat of my own pulse drowning out the conversation, and I was left teetering on the edge of an abyss, knowing that uncertainties lay ahead, each more daunting than the last. The sterile chill of the hospital room had grown suffocating as the doctor's words hung like a looming specter over us. Clara's eyes widened in disbelief, scanning the doctor's face for answers that only he seemed to possess. I could feel the air turn dense, as if the oxygen itself was being siphoned away with his every grave revelation. Complicated how? Clara's voice trembled, yet it bore a steel edge beneath her vulnerability. I admired her resolve even in a moment so fraught with potential despair, but it only deepened my anguish. The doctor exhaled slowly, as if trying to gather courage before admitting something that threatened to unravel the fragile thread of hope. The treatment is effective for your type of cancer, Clara, but we've discovered a lesion in your liver that complicates any aggressive approach. It could mean that the treatment may not only be ineffective, it could also exacerbate your condition. Every heartbeat thundered in my ears as the weight of his words sunk in. I reached for Clara's hand, fearing she might pull away as I felt the tremor of her resolve quake beneath the shadows of uncertainty. What does this mean for us? I whispered, an urgency swirling in my gut. The doctor continued, oblivious to my tumult. We'll need to conduct further tests before proceeding. I know your decision has been made, but I want to ensure you're aware of the risks involved. We may need to explore other options that aren't as aggressive. Just tell me what I need to know, Clara interjected, her eyes fierce despite the uncertainty swirling around us. I want to fight. Whatever it takes. That I could feel the heat of tears prickling the back of my eyes, overwhelmed by her strength in the face of what felt like an insurmountable challenge. Yet the truth whispered at the edges of my consciousness like a dreadful wind. What if this fight was not just against her illness, but against the very real possibility of losing her? The room grew quieter as the doctor nodded, giving her the respect of her choice. I'll have the additional tests scheduled immediately, but I need you to understand there may be setbacks. As the doctor left, the silence felt dense, charged with the unspoken words that lingered like ghosts between us. Clara turned to me, an expression of resolve contorting her delicate features. Do you really think I should still go through with it? She glanced toward the door as if it held the answers we desperately sought. With all this, should I still sign? I believe in you. I believe in hope, Clara, I urged, squeezing her hand. Even if the odds are stacked against us, would rather fight by your side than surrender. Together. A small flicker of a smile touched her lips, but I could see the doubt gnawing at her, sharp and insistent. And what if it puts you in danger too? She asked, her voice soft but heavy with the weight of love and fear. What if? Don't, I cut her off, my heart thundering at the thought of her shielding me from pain. This is not about me. It's about us, about fighting. I can take on anything as long as you're here. What if? She hesitated, biting her lip. What if there's an option we haven't thought of? Something we could do together that might not involve this treatment? We could look for alternatives. I pinched the bridge of my nose as my mind began to spiral. The thought of searching for alternatives sounded noble, but where would we look? What could be right for Clara amidst the despair wrapping around us like a tempest? Before I could answer, the nurse entered with a soft smile, breaking the tension. How are we holding up in here? She asked gently. Clara sighed, reining in the tumultuous storm brewing beneath the surface. I'm not giving up yet, she stated, a tentative strength lifting her chin. The nurse's expression shifted, her own eyes glimmering with understanding. That's a good choice. There's a support group that meets once a week here in the hospital. It's a place where patients and families can connect and share their stories. I want to. Clara spoke before I could mention my worries over her being around others. I want to meet them. Maybe they have insights we haven't considered. I knew a part of me should protest, that there was logic in pulling away from the world and focusing solely on her treatment, but the flicker of hope ignited by the nurse's suggestion began to burn bright. "I'll go with you," I said, giving Clara's hand a reassuring squeeze, feeling her resolve solidify again with newfound purpose, but then Clara's expression hardened, her brow knitting in thought. What if we meet someone who has been through this? What if they're not okay? I felt a pang in my chest, a hollowness forming. But what if they are? I countered gently, coaxing her to see past the shadows of her fears. What if they share what has worked, what hasn't? We could find a new path together. The flicker of hope that had ignited earlier pulsed stronger. Clara nodded slowly, and I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. As the nurse left to fetch information about the support group, I felt Clara's hand tremble in mine. "Promise me something," she whispered, her eyes glistening with determination juxtaposed with fear. "Promise me that however this turns out, we face it together. No more fear." "Just us that I promise," I said, my heart pounding with the weight of those words, solidifying a bond stronger than the looming uncertainties. But just as I felt that spark of hopeful surrender, I glanced from Clara to the door, where I saw a familiar face entering the room, the kind of face I had thought I would never see again. It was my mother, her expression lined with both trepidation and an intensity born of unexpected familiarity. My breath caught in my chest, and I could feel Clara's hand slip away from mine as I stood frozen in disbelief, grappling with how this reunion would unfold amidst trials we were already facing. As my mother stepped closer, her eyes locked onto mine, the air thickened with unsaid truths, and I knew in that moment that the journey was about to take a turn I couldn't predict, one that could shatter the fragile peace we'd cultivated or offer another flicker of hope. The weight of my mother's presence pressed down on me, as if the room had shrunk in size and intimacy. Clara's hand had slipped away, and I could sense her tension as she instinctively recoiled, uncertain of this new dynamic intruding upon our already precarious world. I swallowed hard, unsure whether the rush of emotions escalating within me was anger or the bitterness of nostalgia. "Mom," I finally breathed, as surprised by my own voice as I was by her sudden arrival. It felt oddly foreign, this familiar title that had once brought warmth but now came wrapped in frigid uncertainty. "What are you doing here?" I heard, she said simply, her voice a tapestry woven from threads of concern and something less easily decipherable regret, perhaps. Her eyes flickered to Clara, the understanding woman, caught in the crosshairs of my fractured family tapestry. "Is everything okay?" Clara asked, her apprehension providing a slight fracture to her earlier resolve. There she stood, a fragile warrior in the face of an impending storm, and I wished desperately that I could shield her from the turmoil I knew my mother brought with her. "Clara," my mother acknowledged, a hint of respect softening the formality of her tone. "I didn't mean to intrude. I just wanted to see you, to see both of you." There was an earnestness in her eyes that felt almost jarring, as if she was embarking on this conversation with more intent than I had expected. "Why now?" I couldn't help but let the question slip past my lips, raw and unfiltered. Memories of past wounds surged within me as the unspoken history hung heavy in the air, silent judgments, long-held grievances, and the chasm that had formed years ago. "You know how distant we've been," she replied, her voice dipping with a bittersweet timbre. I realized, life is unpredictable. I spent too long being caught in my own worries, and I don't want to lose the chance to be here for you, for both of you. Clara exchanged a glance with me, an unspoken dialogue flickering between us in the charged atmosphere. I could see the uncertainty rolling through us both as we battled with trust and vulnerability, desperately holding on to the tenderness we had just begun to cultivate after this devastating news. Before I could reply, Clara took a deep breath, her determination reshaping the trajectory of this encounter. It's good to see you," she stammered, her courage igniting a spark between the three of us, uncertain as it may be why mother cast her gaze down, seemingly burdened by her own complexity of emotions. "I should have reached out sooner," she murmured, the apology evident but loosely tethered to sincerity. "I wish we could talk to get to know each other again." The veiled undertone of hope tugged at the edges of my heart. How much would Clara be willing to navigate this labyrinth of family trauma? I steeled myself, torn between the familiar longing for reconciliation and the weight of history that threatened to separate us once again. "That I don't know if now is the best time," I said cautiously, casting my eyes back to the window, the vast distance beyond filled with possibilities and yet tethered to the realities anchoring us here. "This is all so complicated." "Clara I'm here, I want to fight," Clara cut in, her voice steady, paving the way for discussion. "Maybe this is an opportunity for healing for all of us." I felt the threads of tension fray, hesitant but open to the idea, as my mother's eyes glimmered with surprise. "You're strong, Clara." "I admire that," she admitted, her voice softening into something almost tender. There was a hint of empathy in her gaze that wasn't lost on me, an invitation to find common ground amidst the chaos. Then, in that precarious space, a soft laugh erupted from Clara, breaking through the palpable tension. "It's funny how we worry about the unknown and yet end up battling the worst in ourselves," she said, a lightness in her tone that carried a thread of warmth between the three of us that I couldn't help but admire her resilience at that moment, a fragile light igniting amidst layers of deep-seated worries. The strife, the potential for healing. It felt as if the clouds were beginning to part ever so slightly for the first time since we had entered this hospital together, but then, just as I began to envision how this new chapter could unfold, Clara's expression shifted, a flash of vulnerability crossing her features. "But what if it's too late?" she questioned, her eyes cast down as uncertainty clouded her resolve. "What if we don't have the time to heal?" Her words landed squarely between us, igniting a fresh wave of doubt. I felt the air grow heavy again, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. Before I could respond, a voice interrupted the momentum voice from the hallway, shattering the delicate thrum of possibility. "Clara." It was Dr. Sanchez, the lead oncologist, rushing into the room with urgency etched on his face, a file clutched tightly under his arm. "We need to discuss the tests. There's been a development, something I didn't expect." Before I could react, the atmosphere shifted dramatically, warping into a realm of uncertainty where hope and fear collided. I locked eyes with Clara, who seemed to be caught between the promise of strength and the heart-stopping anticipation of what lay ahead. This unexpected reunion with my mother had started to weave a pattern of potential healing, yet the specter of new revelations threatened to unravel it all. As Dr. Sanchez approached, clarity felt dreadfully far away, and I braced myself for whatever truth was about to unfold, aware that we were once again teetering on the edge of a cliff, a precipice with no clear horizon, with every heartbeat echoing the same haunting question: what next? The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thick with uncertainty. Clara's eyes flickered between me and Dr. Sanchez, her pulse racing as she processed the urgency in his expression. My own heart pounded as the weight of hope and dread collided like thunder in the storm brewing inside me. "Is it about the tests?" I asked, desperate for clarity, my voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Sanchez nodded, his eyes serious but filled with a glimmer of something I couldn't fully decipher. Was it reassurance, or merely resolve in the face of difficult news? "Yes, it is." He cleared his throat, shifting the file into both hands as if it might shatter under the tension. "Given Clara's unique situation, we found an anomaly we didn't expect given her current treatment protocol." An anomaly. The word hung in the air, a fragile pendulum swinging between the possible and the terrifying. I could see Clara's breath hitch, every fleeting moment of strength she had summoned receded, replaced by a haze of fearful anticipation. "What does that mean? Is it bad?" she stammered, the flicker of light that once danced in her expression dampening into shadow. Dr. Sanchez drew in a deep breath, steadying himself before unfurling the reality that lay in wait. "It's complicated. It seems that the cancer has evolved in a way we hadn't anticipated. There may be options," but he hesitated, regarding Clara with soft empathy. "They come with significant risks, and we need to have an honest discussion about what those risks are." With every word, an anchor seemed to drop into the ocean of my fears, the weight of unknowing building as Clara's face drained of color. My mother, an unexpected presence, shuffled slightly closer to Clara, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, a silent offering of comfort amid the onslaught of information. "Risks," Clara echoed, eyes wide with disbelief, retreating deeper into her internal labyrinth. I could see the layers of confusion and pain etched into her features as everything she'd fought for suddenly felt eclipsed by doubt, but through the crackling tension, I sensed the flicker of unexpected kindness from my mother. She leaned toward Clara, her voice a gentle whisper. "You don't have to face this alone. I may not have been here, but I want to be now. We're stronger together, right?" Clara glanced up, the dawning realization of connection brushing against her skepticism, yet she held herself tight, a fortress of self-protection. "I appreciate that, but this isn't about being strong. It's about survival." The tremor in her voice belied her brave words, and my own resolve wavered. Dr. Sanchez interjected softly, "Survival is always at the forefront of every treatment decision, but it's essential we weigh each choice with clarity. Would you like to hear more about the specifics?" His eyes darted between us, waiting for confirmation, yet it felt as if the very act of sharing information would tip the scales into chaos. Clara nodded, biting her lip as she steeled herself for the unknown. "Yes, I need to know." It felt like a fragile deal, this opening up to uncertain paths and hard choices. I enveloped Clara's hand within mine, trying to share courage through the warmth of our joined fingers. I could feel her tension seep through my skin, and still the embrace felt necessary, a tether amid turmoil. Dr. Sanchez began outlining potential next steps, detailing the clinical options and projections in careful, methodical terms that felt painfully bland against the backdrop of our emotional storm. I couldn't help but glance at my mother, her eyes darting between the doctor and Clara, the gravity of the moment evolving into a kaleidoscope of emotions sliding through her carefully masked facade. "And what if I don't want to take those risks?" Clara's voice trembled, her knees almost giving way under the enormity of her choice. "What if the cost is too high?" The silence after her question echoed through the room, loud and unrelenting, drowning my thoughts as I felt the weight of the decision settle over us like a shroud. "What are you afraid of?" I asked, my heart breaking, as I realized that what lay ahead was territory we hadn't yet charted. "Will you regret not fighting?" A tear slipped down Clara's cheek, mirroring the turmoil that surged within me. A myriad of emotions cascaded through our small circle: fear, regret, hope, and the ache of love, all interweaving in a dance of uncertainty. And before we could trace the heartbeat of resolution, my mother broke the silence. "No matter what choice you make, Clara, I'll be here," she vowed, her voice thick with emotion. It was a promise, forthright yet delicate. But just as the fragile threads of connection began to weave their way between us anew, the door swung open again. A nurse entered, her expression drawn. "Dr. Sanchez, we need you in the hallway. There's been a situation, it's urgent." The implications in her tone sent ripples of alarm through me, my pulse quickened as Dr. Sanchez cast an apologetic glance at us before hurrying out of the room. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving an electric tension that left us suspended. "What now?" Clara whispered, the despair weighing heavily in her eyes. I felt a similar fragility in my mother's presence, a vulnerability that broke through her stoicism. In the aftermath of what had just unfolded, a new truth emerged: our path was no clearer, but the stakes had risen dramatically. An unexpected realization burned within me, and I uttered the words before I could think better of it. "Clara, if this is pushing us to the limits, then we still have to fight. Together. But I need to know what you're thinking right now, with everything on the table." As I locked eyes with her, the raw weight of my words hung heavy in the air, teetering on the brink of hope and despair. Clara looked down, taking a ragged breath as uncertainty clouded her expression yet again. The moment was pregnant with meaning, and just then, my mother, usually so controlled, whispered a truth I had never expected to hear. "I wish I could trade places with you." With those words, vulnerability flooded the room, weaving new tension into our already fraught connection. Clara's eyes lifted to meet mine, and as the silence stretched, I realized that both heartache and an unexpected bond were thrumming within our hands, a shared understanding that somehow began to reshape the very fabric of our disparate lives. But in the echo of my mother's heartfelt statement lingered a shocking truth: none of us knew just how close we were to the edge of something that could either bond us tighter or tear us apart completely. As the weight of my mother's words settled over us, I felt time freeze, the air thickening with unspoken revelations. Clara's breath hitched, her eyes darting between us as if searching for a lifeline amidst the vastness of uncertainty. The vulnerability my mother had just exposed felt like an unplanned rupture in the fabric of our carefully maintained barriers. "What did you just say?" The incredulity in Clara's voice broke the stillness like glass shattering on a hard floor. "You can't mean that." For a heartbeat, my mother floundered, unsure whether to retreat or to press forward. Her earlier strength seemed to melt away beneath Clara's scrutiny, revealing the cracks in her carefully cultivated armor. "Two meant it," she managed, her voice a tremor. "If I could, I would. It's not right that you should suffer like this." Clara's expression shifted, a potent mixture of disbelief, gratitude, and a filter of sadness tracing through her features. "And what would that achieve?" she asked, her voice quaking. "Would that make the cancer vanish? Would that take the pain away?" Each word was a deliberate swing, mirroring the emotional whirlwind we all navigated. The truth of her despair hit each of us like a tidal wave, erasing any fleeting sense of hope we had grasped just moments before. I squeezed Clara's hand tighter, determined to be the tether that held her to the present, to our reality, no matter how dark. "I know it's not that simple, Clara," my mother responded, her eyes glistening. "But I've watched you fight. I've seen how brave you are, and it infuriates me to feel so helpless." Each syllable was steeped in pain, raw and unfiltered, and I found myself silently thanking her for digging deeper, for exposing her vulnerability. With a convulsive breath, Clara released my hand, pulling it away only to bury her face in her palms. "You don't get it. You can't understand what it feels like." Her words spiraled into a choked sob, and I could see the tension mounting in her shoulders, a physical manifestation of her emotional turmoil. "Then help me understand," my mother pleaded gently, stepping closer, her own fears unguarded as she reached out to Clara. "Help us help you." Clara lifted her head, hesitant but desperate. "What do I do? How do I fight something that feels bigger than me? Every time I think I have a grip on it, it slips away, taunting me, reminding me of what I might lose." That we were trapped in this delicate moment, each of us seeking connection even as the shadows closed in. The path before us was murky at best, but Clara's despair wrapped around us like a vine, threatening to suffocate every flicker of light just within reach. "That I don't have the answers, but I promise to try," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "You don't have to walk this road alone. We can look for other ways, options, support, whatever it takes." As if on cue, Dr. Sanchez returned, his brow furrowed. "I'm sorry for the interruption. We had to address a serious issue that's arisen with the treatment staff. It's critical. I hope you can forgive." His words faded into the background as I watched Clara, her face still streaked with tears, her spirit wavering like a feather caught in the wind. My heart clenched as I wondered what new challenge loomed on the horizon, just when it seemed like the ground was beginning to stabilize. "Can we talk about the options?" Clara asked suddenly, interrupting the whirlwind of my thoughts as she caught the doctor's gaze, determination rippling through her voice. "I need to know everything." Doctor Sanchez nodded, visibly relieved that Clara was ready to engage once more. He picked up where he had left off, diving into the technicalities of her situation, outlining possible treatments with a calm professionalism that felt almost surreal in the midst of our emotional chaos. But as he spoke, a shadow of doubt resumed its grip on my heart. We had just begun to confront the vulnerabilities and fears that held us hostage, yet here we were, pivoting back to stark realities. Then, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a sharp vibrato that punctured through the ongoing discussion. With a glance at the screen, my breath caught, a text from my sister. "Urgent. Call me when you can. It's about Mom." An unexpected chill raced down my spine, an instinctive awareness that something was amiss. I met my mother's eyes, which now shimmered with a new worry. Memories of recent conversations surfaced, casting shadows across this tender moment of unity we had tried to forge. "Is everything all right?" my mother asked, voice wavering. That I shook my head, not trusting my voice. Anxiety gripped me like a vice, and I felt the fragments of the world I once knew teetering on the edge of calamity. I don't know yet, can you call her? Clara prompted, a spark of urgency flashing in her eyes, and I nodded, my heart racing. What if it relates to this? The implications echoed ominously, threading threads of fear through the delicate fabric of our current reality. I held my phone in trembling hands as I stepped aside, seeking a moment of solitude to process what lay ahead, a possibility that whatever storm was brewing might very well engulf us all. With a single swipe, I dialed but couldn't prepare myself for the tremor in my sister's voice as she picked up. "It's about Mom, you need to sit down," she began, and in that very instant, the cliffhanger of our interconnected lives sharpened into striking focus, poised for an emotional fallout we had yet to fathom. As I stood in the dim hallway, gripped by anxiety, my sister's voice pulsed through the phone like a lifeline entwined with dread. "You need to know that Mom's test results just came in. They aren't good. They found something else, something serious." My heart lurched, the world narrowing into a pinprick of sound and chaos around me. "What do you mean?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady, but the words stumbled out like a child learning to walk, uncertain, wobbly. "There's more," she continued, the weight of her tone pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. "I don't know all the details," Booty barely heard the rest. My mother, the anchor of my universe, was slipping away even as we stood together in that sterile room. It was as if the very air around me thickened, each breath an effort against the crushing weight of the unknown. I felt adrift on an ocean of disbelief and fear, battling the waves of grief that threatened to pull me under. "Just tell me," I whispered, afraid to voice the reality that was threatening to crash into our lives, one already fraught with Clara's battle against cancer. "They're saying she might need surgery. It's urgent. You should come home." My sister's voice trembled. I pictured her face, marred with worry, her features pulled tight as reality settled over her like a shroud. Is Mom going to be okay?" The question slipped out, and I flinched at the raw vulnerability laid bare through my words. "I can't say. But we have to be there, together. You know, as a family," she replied, her voice faltering on the last word, emotions swirling like a winter storm. I forced myself to swallow hard, knowing that Clara was waiting. My pulse quickened as I turned back reluctantly, still clinging to thoughts of hope amidst the gathering clouds. But I couldn't shake the sense of impending loss. I nodded weakly as Clara's eyes caught mine, searching for any shard of certainty in this leaky boat we were all aboard. "They'll be home soon," I promised, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. As I hung up, the curtain of impending chaos parted just slightly, and I returned to the room where the weight of everything lay wrapped around us like a dark fog. The discussion about treatment plans swirled around me, but I felt detached, a spectator caught in an emotional undertow. I wanted desperately to cling to the moments of kindness we shared, the gentle squeeze of Clara's hand, the warmth of my mother's presence, but each exchange felt tainted by the knowledge that we were on the precipice of another storm. Clara's eyes mirrored my turmoil when I returned. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice a gentle probe. I hesitated, the gravity of the conversation swirling like smoke in my chest. "Not really." I took a deep breath, forcing the words through the tightness. "We have to go back home. There's something wrong with my mom. She might need surgery." The air around us thickened, heavy with unspoken dread. I could see her processing, the gears visibly turning as she wrestled with the implications of it all. "Are you going?" she asked, her voice trembling on the edges of uncertainty. "Of course I will," I replied, needing to be resolute before the cracks that threatened to break my facade splintered completely. "But I need you with me. We face everything together, right? You can't go through this alone." In Clara's eyes, I caught a glimpse of hope battling against despair. "I know, but you can't forget that I won't let you carry this burden alone," I interrupted, desperate to bridge the chasm of fear that threatened to engulf us. I could see her pain mirrored in my own reflection. As the doctor's voice droned in the background, detailing percentages and statistics, I felt a surge of warmth, not from the clinical discussions surrounding us but from the resilience we shared. The small moments of kindness, the supportive whispers exchanged, felt like a lifeline stretched across the turbulent waters of fear. Then came the unexpected, a nurse entered the room, a soft smile gracing her face. "I just wanted to check in. You both seem to be coping as best as you can. I know this is a hard time, but if you need any support or if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask." It was the smallest gesture, a flicker of kindness in an intimidating realm, but it resonated. We nodded, gratitude welling in our hearts, reminding us that even during storms, there are flickers of light that guide the way. Time felt suspended, every moment stretching into eternity as we discussed plans for her treatment. There was a palpable energy emanating from Clara. It was a potent mix of fear, resolve, and something akin to strength. And I mirrored her sentiment. It fueled a fire within my soul, despite the looming presence of grief. But just as we approached a semblance of understanding, my phone buzzed again, this time, a call from my sister. The pit of my stomach dropped, and I exchanged a knowing glance with Clara, who sensed the shift in me like a hawk detecting the tide. With a heavy heart, I answered, "Hey." Her voice was thick with emotion. "You need to come home now. You won't believe what I just found out." The world tilted violently again, and beneath the surface, the delicate fabric of our lives began to unravel, laying bare new fears, old resentments, and possibilities neither of us had anticipated. The call was a revelation, a truth that could shift the ground beneath our feet once more. "Right now?" I asked, anxiety clawing at my throat. "Yes, it's about Mom. It's urgent, there's something she didn't tell us. Something big." In that moment, the fragile thread we had woven together unraveled sharply, spiraling us into a new reality filled with uncertainty. My heart raced with the promise of discovery and dread, as if the very fabric of our lives had been shifted, revealing hidden depths that were now aflame with questions and fear. As I stood there, heart racing and the weight of the call sinking in, I felt the world begin to tilt again. "What do you mean?" I pressed, my voice shaky with apprehension. My sister's silence echoed through the line, heavy and foreboding. "Please, just tell me," I urged, desperate for anything that might offer clarity. "Mom's had her own tests," she finally blurted out. "The results came back. There's more going on than we realized. She's been keeping it from us." The implications twisted my stomach into knots, and I felt the air grow too thick to breathe. "More?" The word jeered at me, each syllable a throbbing reminder of the uncertainty that wove through our lives like an uninvited specter. "What do you mean?" "She didn't want to worry you or me," my sister managed, her own heartbreak evident in her voice. "But she's been diagnosed with something serious, stage 2 heart failure. They're saying she might need surgery soon, too." In that moment, the ground beneath me felt both surreal and breaking. A darkness spilled through the cracks of my resolve. All the pieces we'd been trying to knit together seemed to fray at the edges, unraveling at the seams. This was not how it was supposed to go. I thought of all the moments we'd shared, all the misunderstandings that strained our bond, yet here we were, in the middle of our own personal hell. "Are you sure?" I whispered, unable to wrap my mind around the enormity of what she'd just revealed. "Hasn't she said anything to me?" "She thought she could keep it hidden," my sister's voice trembled as she continued, "but it turns out she can't manage it alone anymore. She needs us now more than ever." God, my thoughts rushed, broken shards of emotion competing for their place. I glanced back towards Clara as if seeking her presence to anchor me. She stood with a watchful gaze, her own battle waged silently behind layers of fear and courage. The nurse's earlier kindness had felt like a balm against the harshness we faced, yet now, hope began to retreat in the face of this new reality. I returned to the present, each word from my sister's mouth wrapping themselves tightly around my heart. "Can you come home?" she asked, her plea palpable. "Yes, of course. I'll be there," I insisted, needing to regain control over the chaos wrestling for my attention. As I hung up, uncertainty clawed at my insides, a relentless reminder of how fragile life truly was. "Hey," Clara said softly, a question hanging in her eyes. "What's happening?" I swallowed hard, the enormity of news choking me. "My mom, she has heart failure." She needs surgery. The silence that followed was unbearable, a chasm filled with fear and shared understanding. I could see Clara digesting the implications, her face a mirror of concern, the bravery we had begun to forge barely holding against the tide of grief threatening to sweep us away. "Oh. I'm so sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to go home, Clara. We need to be there for her." My heart felt heavy, a burden, a responsibility, and, worst of all, a fear that felt insurmountable. She nodded, though her face registered the great internal conflict brewing inside her. I could sense the silent battle between her own vulnerabilities and the fierce desire to be there for both her battle and mine. "I will come with you," Clara stated firmly, her voice regaining its resolve. "Are you sure? I'm not going to let you face this alone. You've fought for me, now it's my turn," she insisted. The connection we had forged in our shared strife felt even deeper now, despite the looming shadows threatening to shatter the fragile peace we had fought for. We stepped into the fragile light of the hallway together, the chatter of nurses and distant beeps echoing through the corridor as we walked side by side. I could feel that despite the chaos engulfing us, this was still our fight together. The sun gleamed through the glass entrance when we finally emerged from the hospital, illuminating the weight of the choices before us, while simultaneously showcasing the resilience that lived in every beat of our hearts upon arriving home. The atmosphere felt heavy and electric, saturated with unspoken emotions. My family was gathered, faces mirroring the fighting spirit I had come to rely on during Clara's journey. "Hey!" My sister rushed to my side, and my mother looked frail, but the fire in her eyes flickered just enough to keep hope alive. "We're here," I said, and Clara stepped forward, her hand resting gently on my back. It was a gesture of unity, one that spoke volumes beyond mere words. "We can face this together." At that moment, I glimpsed something precious, an intricate intertwining of pain and strength, of family and resilience. The crossroads we stood at held no guarantees, only challenges that tested the very fabric of our beings. "Thank you for being here," my mother said, gratitude softening the weight of her fears. "I'm sorry for keeping this from you. It doesn't matter how we got here," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "What matters is that we're here now." For the first time in a long while, there was no tension lingering between us, just a sense of vulnerability and strength finding its level. Clara stepped closer, reaching for my mother's hand. "You're not alone," she asserted, a fierce determination coursing through her words. As Clara's hand grasped my mother's, waves of healing washed over us, threading through strands of pain, filtering solutions through the cracks in our hearts. There was no denying what lay ahead, but together we would forge our path. In that moment of fragile acceptance, an unbreakable bond emerged, one built on courage, connection, and love, resilient against even the fiercest of storms. I squeezed Clara's hand and looked at my mother, my heart swelling with what felt like a rebirth of sorts. A resurgence of hope glimmered amidst the darkness. Through our collective journey, it became clear, we were stronger together, bound to confront the battles ahead with open hearts and unwavering spirits. "Whatever comes next," I began, inhaling deeply, the weight lifting ever so slightly, "we'll face it. All of us. Together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, drawing the curtain on day's wearying triumphs, I could feel the flickering light of hope expand like a flame fed by the air. And though the road forward remained unknown, it felt within my grasp, a winding path stitched together with resolve, creating a bridge to brighter tomorrows. At that moment, as I gazed into Clara's eyes, she smiled through her own tears, and I understood, love was the truest force of all, the force that would carry us forward, united against every wave of uncertainty, igniting the very essence of our souls. "Together," I whispered, and the glow of hope glimmered bright, a beacon in the darkness. And I knew, finally, that love and connection could overcome even the deepest chasms carved by loss. In the embrace of family, I could find my way back home again.